Well, I started with the developing pictures before taking. Well, I was just taking them with the baby Brownie, the $2.98 camera, and I bought a Kodak developing kit, and we were living in a trailer. I'd have to cover the windows up with blankets and loading reels with blanket over me, loading the reels, and my stepfather would come home and the trailer would be so hot and he'd start bitching and complaining, and so we never got along. Yeah, well, I was often sent to the principal's office. I would say something stupid in the classroom, so they would send me into the boys' room, and then I'd smoke a cigarette. The teacher would come and open the door. I'd smell the smoke, and then they'd send me to the principal's office. So the principal said to me one day, "George, what is it you would really like to do?" I probably said, "I want to be a great photographer." And I showed him some of my prints. And he said, at Tuz Photo Shop, they have a camera club that meets once a week. So I went down and joined it, and I was the only boy. They were all men, there was no women. And I started putting my prints in the competition. Well, at the end of the year, I came out second place. The trophy is like a warrior holding a torch with my name engraved on it. And I quit school at 16. Let's see, I first was a darkroom assistant. And then I made some mistake, and the printer started yelling at me, and I started crying, and I left. So then I got a job with the Newark Evening News in the circulation department. And I did that. I turned 17. And so I knew I had to join the Navy before I turned 18, because the difference was if you were 17 and you joined, you would get out the day before you're 21. So I was actually in 3 years and 5 months. I like the uniform. And then one night, we had a party for enlisted men. I even got a picture of us, the whole crowd there. And I got talking to this officer in charge. And I said, I'm in the wrong business here. I'm really a photographer. So I didn't think he paid much attention to me, but the next morning I had orders report to the photo lab for on-the-job training. They had photography school if you were a high school graduate in Pensacola, Florida. After that, I did the test and I got a high school diploma. Got all the stuff out of my locker and moved to another barracks on the job training. So there was one guy there, he checked me out on the speed graphic camera. And then I was made the captain's, personal photographer for any job that involved the captain, I was sent on it. But I learned how to work the speed graphic. I could work it in the dark. And it had a little button on it where you'd get your focus. It would be two springs would light up, and you'd turn the focusing knob until they became one. But just about everything was done with that speed graphic. Well, so after 2 years in Memphis, I wanted to have sea duty, so I requested sea duty. So I got transferred to the USS Wasp, and the home port was Boston. And because I was a petty officer, I went from being a seaman apprentice to an airman to petty officer, third class, photographer's mate. They said the last plane left, that they were taking men aboard the ship. So they were just collecting them there. And we were all standing around the flight deck, and everybody's big crowds there waving. You know, they're pointing out there, oh, there he is, that kind of thing. And it was like, you know, I just got on the ship, but these guys had been gone almost a year. But we went to Quebec, and I met a waitress there. She sent me in French the newspapers, the front page of newspapers with my picture of the Wasp explosion. Because it was all, my mother had them too. She didn't know for days if I was all right or not. We were about 300 miles out at sea, Greenland, near Greenland. Stike in contact with the Navy. They would like a print of that for the Museum of Modern Art's permanent collection. But he was an old Navy man. He was called captain. He wasn't a captain. Well, he was a captain. I guess he retired as an admiral. I went up there and I visited them, saw my picture. I gave him one glossy and one on matte paper. So there I was in the Museum of Modern Art at 20. I got out a little before I was 21. Yeah, they contacted me. Would I like to print Steichen work? I've forgotten her name right now, but she was Grace Mayer. She was part of that Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer family. And she was very nice. And she's, you know, what am I working on? Well, I'm photographing Patterson. It was just published. And she said, why don't you enter that in this Grand Prix in France? I said, okay. And then I won. I couldn't read the letter for a week till I found some people at Rutgers University Press who could read French. So I forgot, I think I got 5,000 francs. Well, while I was working, doing the home portraits, a girl that worked in the office, she went to school with Lee Whitkin. And she met up with him on the street. And they started talking. And Lee Whitkin told her that he was thinking of opening up a gallery to show photography exclusively. And she said, oh, you got to meet George Tice, you know. So I did, and we searched all over New York for gallery space, and he took a space on East 60th Street, right by Bloomingdale's. But after that first show, you know, he started selling them. Well, he started selling my prints before he had the gallery. So the first prints he sold were my prints, like $25 a print. But he was doing pretty good. He even made over $1 million and was in People magazine. And I was able to quit my doing the home portraits, and I was making enough money to raise a family. Well, I'm always working on a book. And now I've had 24 books published. I might have had a dozen publishers along the way. Doubleday being the first one. I do it as 2-page spreads. So they're not in book form. You're looking at 2 pictures at a time. So you're turning the pages this way. And today I make a blur book. It never ends. It never ends. I mean, so the book I'm working on is life work. So I've done about 20 of these. I keep making changes. It's just a constant change. Even last night, I was making changes. Yeah, well, the book begins with, or near the beginning, is the work I did on the Bowery. So this was the Kodak Pony. They made an 828 model and a 35 millimeter model. Somebody's given me 1 cent. Well, here it's 14. So I'd take a bus to New York or a train to New York. Most of the time I only took like 1 frame. It's better if you take at least 2 frames. So. That tree was taken here in Middletown. When Lee Whitkin died, Philippe di Montebello, who was the head of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, he purchased his print as like a tribute to Lee Whitkin. Well, in time it'll be gone. This is no longer standing. Lincoln Motel and Abe's Disco, downtown Newark. And this I took in, I started working on Lincoln in '81. It's one of the first pictures I took. This gave me the idea that I could make this a book project. I'm sure there's Lincoln Laundromat and Lincoln Liquors and all kinds of things named in honor of Lincoln. And I went around the country photographing Lincoln. Work on it for a few years. I got an offer to go to lead a group of photographers to Russia. And so there was about 30 people, and Cole Weston and I were the leaders, professional leaders. And this picture I took in Tallinn, Estonia. And I was with a woman, and we were walking around photographing, and she gave the kid a piece of gum, and he stuck it in his mouth. And just as this mailman rounded the corner here, and they were told not to speak to strangers, not to Americans, and so he looked a bit nervous. And this I just put in too. This is Bodie, California, ghost town. This was in '65, I think. Yeah. So I only had a weekend there. That's aboard the Memphis Queen on the Mississippi River. And this is Kitty. Kitty got in touch with me. She had these pictures of her and Elvis, and she didn't have the negatives. So I copied them. And she became my girlfriend. And I had a set of the pictures, and for some reason I was trying to make room, and I got rid of them. But I was very interested in Elvis Presley. Pettit's Mobile Station with the water tower, which is my most famous picture. And I agree with that. That's my most, other pictures were before it. The oak tree came in with, when I took that, I made a 1620 and I took it into the Museum of Modern Art, showed it to John Tchaikovsky, and he bought it on the spot. They didn't pay me on the spot, but I would bring Princeton several times. So he was very interested in the Patterson work. And then I had the show at the Met. These things just happen. Like, I don't think I could go to the Met. And say I'd like to have a one-man show. You know, they just have to happen. I mean, if in doubt about something, where to go, I'd go to Patterson. Well, I got an offer from the city of New York to do a poster. And that's when the song came out, New York, New York. So that's all they said it's going to have on the poster. The typography was New York, New York. They said, what would you like to do? So I said, I'd like to go up there and photograph from the top of the Chrysler building where Margaret Burke White did her photograph. So they took out an insurance policy. I had that in my pocket. I went. So if they found the body at the bottom, I was insured. But it's scary being out there. I was actually on a job doing photography for C-train shipping. And they wanted me to get that early in the morning. So I had to climb a mountain to get the view of the C-train building. But I kept looking over my shoulder as the sun began to rise. I saw this kind of like, it looks like a lobster's claw, and this looks like a pearl. I didn't go up there to do this, but this looks nothing like today, like 1971. There's all buildings in front of these buildings. And I think this was the ideal time to photograph the skyline of New York. I got an assignment to do significant American and Canadian banking architecture. The show opened at the Houston Museum of Fine Art. I think there was about 20 photographers. I was given Wall Street, which I felt was the choicest, and that was published as a book. Ansel Adams, I did a workshop with him in '73 and again in '83 in Yosemite. And Doubleday, who published the first Fields of Peace, sent him a copy of the book. And he wrote back a nice letter. And then when I did Artie Van Blarcom, I sent him that. And he wrote back a letter. He said, I don't think he's a very interesting guy. And he thought, he knows I'll do other things and better things in the future. And that depressed me. And that's Deborah. So we've remained friends. And this is a soft focus lens, not a filter. Well, I like working in the dark room. And the prints I make, I feel are permanent as far as their lifetime. I don't know the permanence of digital. I think what I do, darkroom, is in danger of becoming obsolete. They won't make the materials, the chemistry. Well, you can make the chemistry by formula, but film and paper. I mean, it was always considered like this is a new art. It didn't have the history that the other arts had, but that it would, and it certainly. I'm in more than 150 museum collections, so that's and more museums have photography collections. I'm surprised places like the Guggenheim has a photography collection. And the Met, I mean, Stieglitz gifted some of his prints to the Met, and that started their collection. Well, getting the Newark Evening News and looking for it in the one ad section, I never saw them say they wanted an artist photographer. So while doing babies and children throughout the week, I was doing my own personal photography on like weekends. And the time would never be the ideal time if I didn't do it at the same time. So my personal work became my major work. I was looking for beauty and I found it. Some of them are very unlikely places. The art motive is primary, but the documentary idea of this will disappear, the photograph will last.